Hi, my name is Serena Khalifa, and today we're going to talk about tree diversity, specifically urban and rural disparities. So, my research question was, is there a difference between Hadwin Arboretum and rural forests? And specifically, I looked at trees and species diversity. So, some previous studies to back that information up to sort of contextualize where I got the research question from was from this first study in India, where tree diversity is the greatest close to the center of the city, and it decreases as you move away from the city, and also from a study from Morgenroth et al., where urbanization has greater species richness compared to the rural surroundings. So my hypothesis was that there would be significant differences in tree diversity between the rural and urban location. And the rural location is located in Billerica State Forest in Massachusetts, and the urban location I chose was Hadwin Arboretum. So I predicted that there will be more tree diversity in Hadwin Arboretum than the Billerica State Forest. So for my methods, I decided to do 6 quadrats in each location. So I used a measuring tape to get 20 by 20 meter quadrats in each location. And I counted the number of tree species as well in each plot with the type of tree species it was. So in both locations, I randomly chose tree quadrats by looking at a map of each place and dividing up the map into a grid. And then I assigned each section a number and used a random number generator to decide where the quadrats would be. So each location had like randomized places and not places where I chose. So it'd be equal, I guess. And then after I measured the 20 by 20 meter quadrat size, I used neon flags to map out the quadrat, and then I proceeded to count the number of trees in the quadrat, and then I only counted the mature trees in each quadrat, and not like saplings or new trees. And while counting the trees, I took note of the species of each tree using the tree ID guide that we were given, and I repeated this process 6 times in each location. And of course, I analyzed data. So for results, I used a Shannon index first. Well, first of all, actually, it's good to note that I used 7 different tree species that were located in both the urban area and the rural area because I wanted the data to be even, I guess, on both sides. So I just chose to look at 7 different tree species that were located in each area. So for the Billerica State Forest, the Shannon index was 0.805 or 0.81. And it's good to note that the Shannon index has a range from 0 to 1. So the higher number, the less diverse the plot is. And for Hadwin Arboretum, I got a Shannon index of 0.83. So there is a higher number in the Hadwin Arboretum for the Shannon index than the Billerica State Forest, which means the Billerica State Forest is more diverse. I also did a Simpsons index, and in this one, the higher number is more diverse. So again, Hadwin has the higher number, making it more diverse than the Billerica State Forest. I also conducted a percent similarity test between the two places, and I calculated that to be 77.6%, meaning that it is between the two locations, they're very similar, I would say. Lastly, I also did a diversity similarity test in R code, and the figure on the left, well, not figure, but the code on the left shows what I did to produce the figures, and the figure on the right shows, on the x-axis, it shows the species, and each species is assigned a number, and the y-axis shows the number of individuals. So, yes. And the R code also produced two histograms. So the one on the right is part of the rural area, and the one on the left is part of the urban area. Oh, I'm sorry. The one on the left is rural, and the one on the right is urban. Okay. For the discussion. So basically, we can reject the null hypothesis and conclude that there are significant differences in tree diversity between the rural and urban location. That means that Hadwin Arboretum has a higher tree diversity than Billerica State Forest. So if we contextualize this with other works, we can look at the research of Sukuyazani, Yannick Useni et al., and they mention areas called peri-urban places, which is an area surrounding a city or a town. And I believe this describes Hadwin perfectly, even though it is unnatural, which we can get to that part later on. But essentially, they said that peri-urban zones and their vegetation present a mix of both ecological conditions of undisturbed and disturbed habitats, which means rural and urban habitats, which favors an increase in plant diversity. So they're basically saying that the peri-urban zone are a mix of rural and urban conditions, which increase, which means that they favor an increase in plant diversity. Also, there's another study by Walski et al. Saying that remnant and regenerating forest stands significantly influenced urban forest composition, which I also think Hadwin represents, because Hadwin, like I mentioned before, is unnatural, and there have been people that have gone in and planted many different trees. So that means that they essentially get a say in what trees go where, and clearly that means that, like, they are regenerating the forest unnaturally and not naturally, which sort of coincides with what Nawalsi was saying about, like, regenerating forest stands like significantly influenced urban forest composition. In another study from Blood et al., an estimated of 1/3 of urban trees are planted, which makes sense because urban trees are more unnatural, I would say. But um, what I was trying to say was urban forests often contain like similar communities to peri-urban forests, which makes sense because peri-urban forests are forests that are just outside of a city or town. Um, and they contain altered plant conditions, which means that um, scientists go in and they either plant trees that aren't native there, or they they alter the conditions of what is naturally there, which makes it surprising that the species, well, makes it unsurprising that species found in peri-urban places are almost all in urban places. Um, so the limitations of this study is that I measured the quadrats and I put the flags in by myself, which could sort of skew the data because the plots might not have been um, symmetrical. Um, the quadrats might have been uneven because I did it all by myself, I guess. Also, I only counted similar tree species for my data at least. Initially, I counted all the trees in the quadrats and all the species, but then when I was doing my data, I found it a little bit unmanageable. So I picked out similar tree species in each location to compare the diversity. Um, Also, Hadwin is again not a natural forest, so the data obviously would be different if it was a natural urban forest and a natural rural forest compared to an unnatural urban forest and a natural rural forest. Um, Also, the location of the forest could be a limitation as well, um, because the Billerica State Forest was um, it's used for a lot of dirt biking and hiking, um, and I feel like a lot of the trees were um, either like they were cleared out because of a little bit of dirt biking paths, or they were um, cut down just for other reasons. So to continue my research, I would want to again look at tree diversity in actual natural forests and maybe um, look at tree diversity in different states or different coasts with rural and urban aspects. And these are my sources.